Okay, if everyone's ready, we're going to get started. So welcome, everybody. My name is Hannah. I am the Communications and Marketing VP for the Business Tourism Society, and I just want to welcome you all to this HR panel. I'm going to start with a series of questions for our panelists, and then there'll be time at the end for student questions. So if we could begin with each of you introducing yourself briefly, your organization, and your HR role within your organization.
So my name is Jessica Hughes. I work for BDO, which is an accounting firm in Halifax. And my HR role with the organization is a little bit different than a traditional HR role in the fact that I'm actually a senior manager there, overseeing a lot of the assurance practice, so audits and reviews and things like that. But because we're a national firm, our HR is mostly done out of Toronto or Montreal. So I get to be the local kind of person on the ground to conduct interviews and weed through resumes and attend events and things like that. So I help out in that capacity.
My name is Coralie Gallant, and I'm with the Canada Revenue Agency. I'm a GST HST team leader, and similar to Jessica, I am not in an HR role. However, I do conduct a lot of HR responsibilities, such as reviewing resumes, conducting the interviews. At CRA, it's a little different, where our HR section, they're really advisors, so they just help us navigate through the process and make sure that, you know, the assessments that we're doing are the right assessments for the positions that we're trying to hire.
All right, my name's Sydney Hiltz. I am an associate at Thornton. It is an accounting firm, but I am actually part of the Atlantic consulting practice. So our team focuses on providing HR consulting services, including recruitment and retention, culture assessments, HR strategy, and other support to organizations to address their people challenges. My main role within that focuses on helping our clients with the full cycle recruitment and retention processes. So that can mean anything from identification of the position needed for the organization, leading right up to the onboarding processes and everything in between. Another area where I do focus is in total rewards. So this may include providing compensation evaluations for our clients for specific roles within their company, and also providing benchmarking analyses and then going into helping them by providing suggestions for improvement of their total rewards.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Krista Martin. I am a senior recruiter of early talent acquisition with RBC. That's a really fancy way of saying I'm a campus recruiter. So my clients are students. That's all I recruit for throughout Atlantic Canada and our national office roles, mostly out of Toronto. RBC, of course, is Canada's largest bank. What people don't know about us is as obvious, I guess, is that we have many different streams of business. So we have technology and operations, we have investor and treasury services, capital markets. We're a huge employer of various different streams of lines of business. So we don't just hire business students or finance students. We hire from every discipline that you can possibly think of.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Wynot, and I'm a human resources business partner with Eastward Energy, which is formerly Heritage Gas, which is the natural gas distribution utility in Nova Scotia. My overall responsibilities are everything from payroll to benefits to human resources. And I am actually a one-person team at the moment, so I am actually responsible for the organization's transactional HR activities, but also for the strategic direction that the company takes with regards to human resources. And so my job on a daily basis is about trying to balance the needs of the workforce with the needs of the business to make sure we create an engaging workplace that has top talent that wants to stay with us, but also to be able to attract top talent. So I do everything from hire to actually terminations and everything in between. So there's probably a never dull moment in my day. So I have all aspects of HR under my belt.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Could you describe what you were looking for in a candidate for a position within your organization, for example, school, work, or volunteer experience, and what gaps students are often missing that they can address while still in school?
Sure. So I'd say the biggest thing that we tend to look for is really demonstration of the ability to prioritize and good time management skills. So how we often look for this would be in addition to your course load, if you have any volunteer experience or sports, a part-time job, tutoring, volunteer work, all of that would be kind of what would set someone apart when we're kind of going through our application process, because again, it just shows that you can prioritize multiple tasks and multiple deadlines and things like that. So that's definitely what we look for. And what was the other part of the question? Sorry, gaps?
Yeah, the gaps that students are missing that they can address while still in school.
Yeah, so get involved really at university level. If you're not, if you don't have like a part-time job or something, volunteer. Or get involved with the Business and Tourism Society here. There's lots of great avenues to demonstrate kind of additional extracurricular stuff in addition to your core studies.
So at the Canada Revenue Agency, we have a vast array of different opportunities. So we do hire people from business backgrounds, any kind of background sort of thing. I specifically would be looking for somebody who has minimum intermediate accounting 2. We'd also be looking for people with that would have advanced accounting as well. But there are positions for people who wouldn't have that. So with respect to like school, if you were looking for what kind of courses to take, those lead to additional opportunities. Also, we would be looking at resumes. So I would say for gaps, like if you're able to, like the first opportunity to get an interview with us is somebody who does have a resume that's of good quality and, free of error and maybe has been a little bit more tailored to the position. So those things are definitely important. So if you're looking to, maybe get that first opportunity to even do an interview with us, to put the effort in to have a good resume, a good cover letter, relay it to the job that, we're posting and try to bring out the skills that we're looking for. When we're doing interviews, we're often looking for people that have, good interpersonal skills, communication skills, being able to deal with difficult situations. So somebody, if you're looking for like ways to get involved, being on a committee or volunteering somewhere, we also have the CVITP program where you can volunteer with the Canada Revenue Agency, so that obviously looks really good. And it just gives you some additional things to put on your resume that really applies to the role. Also, like Excel skills, they're very important at CRA. It's a program that we use a lot, so obviously somebody who's able to to navigate Excel really easily, that's, if you're able to demonstrate that during an interview or maybe during some sort of testing, that's obviously something that would be an asset for us. Also, bilingualism is an asset. So if you do have an ability to speak the second language, then you want to demonstrate that on your, cover letter or resume, because it is a gap that we have at the agency that we're, a skill that we're looking for all the time. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I can definitely say that I would agree with both Jessica and Coralie in both those soft and hard skills. So when it comes to having that first look at a resume, seeing that you do have those qualifications is obviously a big factor, as well as knowing that you do pay attention to detail and that you can be professional. When it comes to, I guess, those soft skills, especially within Grant Thornton, one of our, I guess, our objectives in general is helping clients, colleagues, and the community. So again, agreeing with Jessica and knowing that you do care about the community, you have had experience with volunteer work and just kind of being social and a part of something greater than just the education is something that is very important to us and something that we do like to see on those resumes.
I don't think there's a whole lot more that I can add, to be honest, because I agree with all of my colleagues here on the panel. The only thing I guess that I will sort of reiterate is those transferable skills and making sure that your resume is customized to the job. So you may spend hours getting your resume right, and you should spend hours getting your resume right. The challenge is that that resume can't then be used for every single position you apply for, because every position has different qualifications. Excuse me. So if, never lie on a resume, for goodness sake, never lie. That's never going to bode well for you. But, if a position is really looking for Excel skills, then you want to make sure on that resume you're not implying that you have Excel skills, you're demonstrating where you used Excel and how you have those skills. So you're going to probably have to take out a couple of bullet points about using other tools. That's okay, because that job needs to be and be seen as, your Excel skills being first and foremost in order to get that interview. You can always talk about your other skills after. All of us, even students, can probably have a resume that's 2, 3, 4 pages long. You never want to do that, right? It's got to be a maximum of 2, ideally 1, but it's got to be customized. So you can have a resume, a master resume that has every kind of experience, skill, course, whatever you might have on it. And then when you're going to apply for a position, you build your new resume specifically for that job, because your first foot in the door is getting that resume noticed. And if without all those skills matching, it's highly unlikely.
I'm going to echo what everybody else has said, but a few other points. Number 1 was pay attention to detail in the resumes that you submit, but make sure you read the job postings correctly and look what they're looking for and go through it and highlight it. And am I addressing it in my resume or in the cover letter? And if the posting says submit a cover letter, submit a cover letter. There's a reason why the employer is asking for it. And that's your opportunity to sell yourself actually in your cover letter. And it's an area where something might not fit on your resume, but you want to share some information with me that's going to make you stand out. And this is where the gap comes in. You can fill, I think when it comes to gaps, people, you get your education, we know you have a certain level of knowledge, you've gone through the program, but what have you done on campus? Or did you work on a special project or a collaboration team? Share some of that, because that demonstrates other areas you can work collaboratively. You know how to meet deadlines. There's different elements, like you can think back on some of the things you've done through school to help sell yourself, because it is really about selling yourself to catch our attention as recruiters, but also the hiring managers, because they may look at something slightly different if they see on your resume based on your background. So it is a really important aspect of the finding a job is to make sure you read the job posting correctly. And if there's things being asked for, make sure you include it all in the submission. That's really important, because we can get lots of resumes, so you need to stand out in the crowd. The other thing was one of the skills we've mentioned a lot, but the other one is being able to have some critical thinking skills and be able to make decisions, analyze things, and come to some things. We're all learning, especially when you're new to the workforce, but I think that's important from us. Are you able to look at things, problem solve is really important in our business. And so how have you demonstrated that would be something that I would look for. The other thing is being able to communicate and listen effectively. And that's on both sides, but really think about that when you're crafting your resume, and how could I demonstrate that maybe to a potential employer. So I echo what everybody else said, and I'm sure we all have taken resume writing courses and writing cover letters. It is a really important tool on your journey of getting your first job.
If I could just hop in on one more point on that too. I think we're all kind of saying the same things, but real life example from this past recruiting season is I was reading a cover letter, and peppered through the cover letter of how they wanted to work for BDO, they also wanted to work for Irving. So please get someone to proofread your resumes and make sure, that these other ladies mentioned, that you're tailoring your cover letter for the position. So it's really great to see someone demonstrate they've actually Googled the company they're applying for and can kind of tie a little bit back, maybe about the vision or the mission of the organization back to why that would align with their values. So, yeah.
I don't know if you want to go first.
I was just going to add, I know we talked a lot about resumes and cover letters, but even like in an interview process, just to give you guys an idea, we're often not necessarily looking for your educational skills during that interview because you have a degree or you have the education. We already assume that you know how to maybe do the role like in a technical aspect, but we're usually doing situational type of questions and trying to test those soft skills during an interview. So if you're kind of wondering what would a process look like at CRA, we would be doing situational type questions to determine how do you deal with a particular difficult conversation, maybe a difficult conversation with a taxpayer, or a conflict between you and your coworkers.
I think I just wanted to say one more thing relating to Jessica's comments with interviewing. Make sure that you know the company. I know with focusing mainly on the recruitment process, I do speak with a lot of candidates in the run of a day, and it's shocking how many people applying for a position don't actually know, one, the position that they're applying for or anything about the company. So one of the main questions that we would typically ask is what do you know about the company and the position, and how can your experience really relate to both that company and that position? And there are times when the candidate is just completely not ready for that question, and sometimes we'll even ask what company it is again. So definitely know the company, know the background, know the position, and what we would be looking for in those terms.
Perfect, thank you. So following on from that, when students get that first job after graduation, what advice would you offer and what mistakes should they avoid?
So the biggest piece of advice that I could give for new grads kind of entering their first work experience is to take advantage of every opportunity that you're given. I remember when I started, that was something that I really tried to make sure that I did, which meant that if anyone was looking for people to join the social committee in the office, or if a partner was looking for someone to help them with a task, even if I had some other stuff on the go, being the first one to put your hands up for any opportunity in the workplace, or organizing a volunteer day. Like, there's so many great ways for you to be able to stand out, and I think the biggest way to do that is being the first one to say yes and to be really eager, really keen. That's, I'd say, the biggest advice that I could give.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. I'd also say applying the feedback that's given to you from your supervisors. So I feel like I give a lot of people feedback, but it doesn't always get applied in the future, sort of thing. So I would say that maybe makes a certain employee stand out more, that they are actually taking the feedback that I'm giving them and applying it in the future. And I would say mistakes to avoid, I guess, would be maybe not asking enough questions. So while you should be trying to do your work independently, there's obviously a learning curve when you start any job. So try to tackle something, but don't, spend countless hours just trying to figure things out yourself. Sometimes it could be something that, somebody can just explain to you the process and everything's kind of cleared up and you can have a better understanding. So I see a lot of people that, are really spinning their wheels and maybe not moving forward, and that's because they're just really trying to, they want to be extra independent, and while the job requires some independency, sometimes you need some guidance as well.
Another factor that I would point out in terms of what advice I would give a new graduate, I guess two things. So one would be, don't compare yourself to other graduates. This was something that I personally had a hard time with when I graduated, but every person is on their own career path and truly going at their own pace. It's not to say that if somebody, for instance, moves up ahead of you or starts in a different position that you might see as being a better position, again, they have their own career path, and it's not limiting your success or your potential to be successful in the future. Definitely go at your own pace and learn and focus on developing your skills and honing those, and just keep going at your own pace. Secondly, I would also say that it's really, really important to make connections. So I guess making connections when you're in university is definitely a big thing, because you do want to get that opportunity for your first job, but keeping up with those connections and continuing to build those, whether it's within the organization that you're working for or outside of the organization. This can lead to new opportunities for learning, potential career advancement in the future, or even just building on the business, bringing new clients into the business, and just building all of those connections as much as you can.
I think we're going to give you a full-time job on top of your new full-time job, because you need to do all of that. And I also think if the organization doesn't have a formalized mentorship program, ask for a mentor. It's hugely beneficial in an organization to have someone, one key person that you can go to, bounce ideas off of, ask quick questions to, so you're not spinning your wheels on something that's probably, very simple. Or, if you're trying to figure out how you can get better at something, is there someone, an expert on the team that maybe you just don't know yet who can help you in some way? You also need to be a little patient. And that's not something that comes easy to this generation as a whole. And so what I mean by that is, get that first job and take every learning opportunity you possibly can to learn the skills, the professionalism, the company culture, by getting involved, getting to know your coworkers, getting to know your job really well, even if you don't like your job very well, and that happens, you're still going to gain fantastic skills. You're going to meet great people. You're going to build your network, and it's only going to help you with your future career growth. So try not to concentrate on, I don't like this job. I need to get that job, or I need to get the job. I need to get out of here. You can absolutely keep looking, keep your eyes open, but really focus on doing a fantastic job and getting everything you possibly can out of that first one to then help you springboard to the next.
Pretty much what everyone has said has been in my notes to say today too. But it goes back to, I think there's a theme. Your learning doesn't stop when you leave here. Your learning is going to continue, but it's a different type of learning. And you have to be open to, I think, experience the workplace when you first get out there, to really follow through and getting to know your organization and the people and maybe building relationships. But I also think that first job is a little bit about discovery. And it's you discovering what you might like about a workplace, or what you do not like, or what you like about your job or you don't like about your job. And it's a discovery phase to maybe make your decision on what your next step might be, because it's just the first step of many along a career path. But it's always interesting to look back on. I think if we all look back on our first jobs, we learned a lot. I can tell you I learned a lot. I'm not where I thought I'd be when I started my first job. And it's about just sort of taking a moment and having patience. That I had that written down as well. Because things don't necessarily move at the same pace that's in your control when you're in school or different things like that. The workplace could be different. Now, and all workplaces are not the same. So that's what's just, I think it's a discovery phase is your first position, but you have to have a little bit of patience and You may not like it, but you may love it. You may discover something. And if an opportunity does come to you, and it may be in addition to what you have to do day to day, it might be a good thing, because you might discover, oh, there's a reason why they gave me this, or it could mean you're highlighted in some other way. So don't look at additional responsibilities that may not be on your job description as a negative, because there could be a reason why leadership is tapping you on the shoulder for that. So I think that would be my words of advice. And something that I would avoid, and I know it's really probably off topic a little bit, but most organizations now have codes of conducts and different things like that. And something to be aware of, now that you're in the workplace, your social media profiles become part of you in your workplace and in your professional life. So always be cognizant of what you're putting out there in social media, because it can now be tied back to your organization. And I think that's really important in this day and age, because it can impact your employer, but it can impact your employment with your employer. So I just want to put that words of advice out there to, you might be in one phase and you're going to move on to another phase. So just keep that in mind.
So this next question has been a prominent theme across all of the sessions, and I feel like we all know it's coming. How has COVID-19 and the pandemic impacted your HR strategies?
I'd say through the pandemic, it was a lot harder to do a lot of our recruiting because it was all virtual. So much of our recruiting strategy at an accounting firm is to do live events, to host information sessions, to have open houses and have students come to our office and meet them. And really, after those events, we already know who we kind of want to hire before they've even applied from those events. So because we focus so much on relationships, we really value those events to be able to do that. So the pandemic threw us a lot of curveballs, but definitely trying to do all those virtually and remotely made it really challenging. So we were really thankful this year to be able to do everything in person again. And I think it was nice for the students to not have to do a virtual interview and actually get to feel like you're building a relationship with someone versus just sitting in front of a screen.
Yeah, I would say at CRA, when the pandemic hit, it's definitely increased the amount of hiring that we've done, because the pandemic maybe sent some people into retirement because they did not like the virtual world so much. So we did see a very large increase in very experienced staff retiring. We also saw a large increase in additional funding. And so it was maybe a little bit difficult to keep up with our hiring strategies, because now we're in a virtual world, and how do we reach either new students or qualified employees outside of the organization to fill all of these spots. So we did do different things as well. So we have done our hiring basically virtually. We still currently are doing that as well. So all the interviews have been conducted on Microsoft Teams. If you were to follow me on LinkedIn, you will see that I constantly post any of our opportunities on LinkedIn, whether it be for students or for full-time employees outside of the organization. So I did increase my LinkedIn network, looking for professionals within HRM, concentrated maybe for some instances more on people who have business or accounting. However, if anybody doesn't have that and they want to reach out to me and learn about any of the opportunities at CRA, I'm knowledgeable about those. So if anybody wants to add me to LinkedIn, that's completely fine. I will respond to you. We've also had to make our offers more competitive. So in the past, CRA has salary ranges, and people outside of the organization would have started at a lower salary range. We've realized we've had to be more competitive, and sometimes, if somebody has something really good to offer, we are making them offers at a higher salary range. In addition, we've been making permanent offers to employees. So in the past, sometimes CRA would have offered term positions in order to kind of determine, is this person suitable for employment at CRA? However, we've had to be much more competitive and make those offers of permanent employment. We've also done a lot of hiring of students particularly these last 2 years, we've done a lot of hiring of fourth-year students, hired them part-time during their last year of university, offered them part-time work. We're completely flexible on the amount of time that a student is able to provide to us, and then with the intention that once they're done their degree, that we would offer them a full-time position and bridge them into a permanent position with CRA, assuming that, they did a good job during their employment with us. So we've been doing a lot of those strategies, which we haven't maybe done as much in the past. They might have been available, but we just didn't have the exponential growth that we're seeing today.
So coming from an HR consulting perspective, it's been really important for us to truly understand the labor market and how it has changed in the past couple of years, and those people-related challenges that have really affected our clients due to the pandemic. So, for instance, and I have a feeling that others are going to talk about this as well, but for instance, the Great Resignation, and for those who don't know, the Great Resignation is basically can be described as an economic trend that we've seen since probably the beginning of 2021, where employees in all industries across Canada and the US have started to voluntarily resign from those positions. But the basis that we found of that Great Resignation is more of a reevaluation of an employee's needs and wants within their company. So as consultants, we've supported our clients through these challenges by conducting assessments of their current culture and total rewards, and kind of providing them with advice as to how employees are starting to see their work environments, how they are more considerate of having that work-life balance, of having those total rewards, not just base salary, and the role that their job plays on their overall quality of life. So based on market analysis and what we've been seeing with employees, we provide suggestions based on that. And also this has led to the recruitment of new employees within the organization and implementing new retention strategies to really keep that talent and compete in a highly competitive market.
I feel like I have the easy job because I just keep saying all of that, because all of that is true, and I think every company has had to adapt in different ways. One of the things I just want to mention that RBC was very cognizant of during the pandemic was the employee care and how their employees felt and how they were supported and what they were fearful of, what they felt comfortable with, and how they were really doing themselves and their families. And they provided, helplines. They gave us access to Headspace, which is an online app to help with mental health and meditation and all different kinds of really cool things. And by doing that, it really made RBC employees feel valued and cared for. And that's how you start to keep that culture going and make people feel like they are being supported and cared for during this really tumultuous time. In terms of the recruitment side of things, and specifically thinking of students, we of course had to switch everything to virtual. The great thing with working with students is you're all so tech savvy that it really wasn't a big switch for you, right? We send you a link, you guys figure out the technology, and boom, we're face to face through a computer, but other than that, you're good to go. It wasn't the same, of course, as meeting you face to face, and we all missed that. And I'm noticing a little bit of, that hesitancy to come back to in-person events. there's always a lot of people. Everybody wants to attend, but wanting to engage with people is still a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. So, I think you'll see more networking events come up through employers and through your organization, your school, that kind of thing, that will give you those opportunities to start to hone those skills, which are really important. But, I will never say COVID was a good thing, but there were some silver linings. And by that, I mean, we switched all of our student jobs that we could to virtual. And so we hire in that first summer, that March of 2020, right? Yep. I kind of try to block it out. But so that 2020, we had 1,500 students-ish about to be hired, and that's when everybody pretty much got sent home and things started to shut down. And so we were in a little bit of a panic of what are we doing with 1,500 students who are all supposed to go into various offices in less than 2 months. And so we were waiting for, what to do next from our CEO. And obviously there were some crocodiles closer to the boat, as we say. So we had to be a little bit patient and wait for him to make a decision. And his decision was, absolutely, we're still going to hire those students. We now have to switch them to virtual. So now figure that out. And so task force came into place. We had to get technology shipped out to every student. Those kinds of things happened relatively quickly. And we really moved fast in order to be able to support our students. It also allowed for students who were not in various city centers to have jobs with RBC that normally you would need to be in the office for. So there were a lot of opportunities that were Toronto-based, for example, that our Atlantic students got to benefit from. So selfishly, as a campus recruiter, I was pretty happy about that, and so were a lot of Atlantic students. So, always look for the good things that can come out of some bad things. Look for areas that you can help. I think we're better prepared as organizations now to deal with such crises going forward. So, and we've sort of adapted now going forward in that not all jobs are necessarily, having to be in one particular geographic location. There's a bigger mindset about where they could be and how they could operate.
So the question was, how did COVID-19 impact your HR strategies? Well, I can tell you, the last 2.5 years, that's all I've focused on. And it was a great experiment. And there is a positive to it, because a lot of the traditional HR policies and practices that are in the workplace today probably wouldn't have occurred. The changes that have occurred over the last 2.5 years would have taken years to happen, because leadership is always have a traditional mindset and things are slow to change because it's okay, we're meeting the needs of the business the way we are. So this provided an experiment for numerous things, whether it was for systems improvement, process improvements, or policy improvements. And I think the biggest one that we've all been impacted by was our workplace model. So I work for a traditional natural gas utility, which the expectation is you're going to be in the office Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. Remote work was never a conversation. Well, here we just did a 2-year experiment. You're not going to go back to Monday to Friday anymore, because the expectation is of the workforce, we just did this for 2.5 years. Why can't we continue it? So then you have to work at the benefits. There's benefits to the organization for having people back, because you want a collaborative environment, you want your workplace culture, but you can still give your workforce flexibility to maybe not be in the office maybe 2 days a week. Maybe you only have core business hours from 9 to 3, but you're expected to work 8 hours a day. Well, you can work those other hours if you work more better at 10 to midnight. So it forced employers to really look at some very traditional things that were happening in the workplace that would have been hard to change, evolve. Another one is dress code policy. We all had maybe business dress or business casual. My workplace has significantly changed on that. We can be way more casual now. We can't wear Lulus like everybody did during the pandemic, but we now have denim and different things like that. Like, it's more relaxed. So, and I think that's good for culture too, because I think we all changed over the last 2.5 years, because it goes back to the Great Resignation, where it is really the great reevaluation. Everybody has looked at the job they did, where they did it, and how they did it, and what balance they want in their life and at work. And I think people are setting boundaries, and this is where this great resignation or the quiet quitting comes into play. Because, commuting to work can take time, or you're answering emails after hours, and people decided that boundaries might be a good thing to set up that balance, and employers have to be accepting of these boundaries being setting. So it's a little bit of a reshuffle happening for employers and employees in the relationship. Maybe before the employers might have been the leader in the relationship, but maybe it's the workforce now being the leaders, or maybe it's finding the right medium. Their voice is being heard more because it's more important. Because we really did care about all of our employees during the pandemic. We wanted to make sure everybody worked safely. From our perspective, our customers were safe. So I think that's where HR strategies really came into play. And the other big one is that we all had to deal with, fortunately, I guess, or unfortunately, was looking at some of our healthcare policies and our sick policies and our vaccination policies, which were hot topic items for business. Really hard decisions had to be made, and where you're going to be from a recruiting employer. I can tell you, if you apply for a job at Heritage Gas or Eastward Energy now, you still need to show your proof of vaccination. It is a requirement for coming into our business as a new hire. So that hasn't disappeared. So there's lasting impacts that have come out of COVID. There's been really great strategies, though, that really move the needle on some things that would have taken years. And so there are positives.
So just very quickly before I move on to the last question, it seems that a lot of the HR changes were definitely more employee-centric. Do you think this would have happened if the pandemic didn't take place, or was it spurred on by the pandemic?
I can answer that. I don't think they would have happened as quickly. And I also think there's a bit of a generational thing happening too, is because I think some of these were already expectations of the next generation coming into the workforce, who it was sort of out there in the HR world, like you need to be aware, but it's going to take time. I think the pandemic fast-tracked everything, and it required a lot of, I know from my organizational perspective, to lay out a change of mindset. Like being a utility is very much, like I said, traditionalist. It's not going to work if you want to attract talent and retain our talent. So for sure.
Perfect, thank you. So our last question, once students get their foot in the door and they want to progress with their careers, where do you see opportunities for jobs within your organizations over the next 2 to 4 years? And what advice would you give students to aspire to advance within your organizations, and what does advancement look like?
Yeah. So with us being in a public accounting firm, we definitely look for the first step of your career, once you get your foot in the door, to be obtaining your CPA designation. So some students take a fast track approach to doing that through the CPA Atlantic School of Business, where they can obtain that a lot quicker within, I think it's 18 months, and then you need 30 months of practical experience. But certainly within the first 2 years, that's the biggest thing we look for. And really, when you're working with us in those 2 years, getting your designation, that's your number one priority. So we make sure that we give you everything that you need to succeed through your modules and through the common final exam at the end. So that's definitely step number one. But I'd say in terms of past that, career progression, specifically with BDO, so we're the 5th largest accounting firm in the world and within Canada, and we have been growing exponentially. So when I started with BDO 9 years ago, there were 6 or 8 of us, and now our Halifax office is almost 100. So I was very fortunate that I was able to be part of that growth, but that growth is still happening. So even new graduates that are coming in, I tell them all the time, like, the sky is your limit. Like, we set up our talent strategy such that you are in the driver's seat of your own career and you can progress as quickly as you want to. There's people that have just kind of gotten their CPA designation, and normally you might stay as a senior accountant with us for 2 to 3 years before you make that next step to manager. And because we're growing so fast, we're able to move them up even quicker to be promoted faster into management positions. So career progression specifically with BDO, I'd say within the first 2 to 4 years, like, you could definitely make manager within 4 years with us, just at the rate that we're growing. Again, if you're one of those people that are putting your hands up lots, if you're top talent, and if you're really demonstrating that you want to grow quickly, like, the sky's your limit.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. At the Canada Revenue Agency, we're exponentially growing, so The higher level positions are obviously being filled by people who have much less experience than in the past. But people kind of take it upon themselves, and it's like really the go-getters that are going after those positions, and they're still able to succeed. It's not like people are not able to succeed in those positions. It's just there's so many available now that people are reaching those positions well before they used to be receiving those positions. I would say types of advice that I could give, being part of a mentorship program, that always helps. So if there is a specific position that you're interested in, job shadowing, somebody in that position, you really want to make sure that you're looking for something that you love. You're spending a lot of time working every day. And so, for example, at CRA, maybe audit is not everybody's choice. You can job shadow other positions to see what's really aligning with my skills and my values, to make sure that every day you're happy going to work. Don't count yourself out of opportunities. Make sure that you apply on anything that you feel you're remotely qualified for. You don't really know in this job market now because, like I said, it's growing at an exponential rate, so the experience that we previously needed has been lessened quite a bit. Work hard to find new learning opportunities, and talk to your manager. If you have a supervisor, they've probably been in your shoes before, and they're somebody who can help you, maybe help you guide your career and give you some ideas of, maybe if you apply on, if you take part of a committee, that'll build your leadership skills. Just really talk to them about your goals and what you really want to achieve in the organization, and they can probably help you, come up with some ideas of how you can reach those goals.
So I feel like I am reiterating the past two answers, but in terms of Grant Thornton, we've seen from our firms across the country, as well as in GTUS, that advisory services are actually the largest growing offering that we have. So given our presence in the Atlantic market right now and the size that we have a tremendous opportunity to grow that, and we are expecting steady growth in the years to come. So in terms of progressing in your career, I would say that to progress in your career, it's really important to find your niche and to find the area where you personally thrive, and really understand what you want to be known for. So if you're focusing, I think, on your own personal and professional developments, the career progression will really come almost automatically from there. The advice that I would give would be, again, to be open and honest with your manager or even a mentor about your goals, and then sit down and really think about what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals and career objectives, and how can you piece those together to create your roadmap to find that success.
It's again, all of that. It's really, I'm going to go back to kind of being a little bit patient, right? And again, what I mean by that is really taking that first role and understanding what your part is in it, what your organization wants from you, what your manager wants from you, and what you can deliver and what you can give back and what you can get out of it. It's one of that first job is not necessarily the job you're absolutely going to love, and that's okay. It could absolutely be a job you love, but you spend a lot of time at work. A lot. When you really start to think about how many hours a day you're there, how many days a week, and all of that, you really need something that, as my 7-year-old says, fills your bucket. And so you need to find out what really fulfills you and what's going to make you happy. And sometimes it's even various organizations. It's not necessarily the job. It might be with various organizations because they all have different values and different ways in which they do business. So don't discount, the parts that you're learning from your job, again, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. Be really open and be as much of a team player as you possibly can when you start that job, because there are just different things, different tasks, different people you're going to meet. It can really help and project your career in a different way that you didn't even think possible, right? People ask me how I got into recruiting, and it's actually because I went to dinner with a friend of mine who was visiting on business, and her boss was with her, and we were out having dinner, and it just turns out that that's what got me into recruitment. It was just the most bizarre thing ever. But it's taking those opportunities and just being open to talk to different people and find out what they're about and learn about what opportunities are out there. And so really just take your time. If you know what you want, go for it. Absolutely, 100%, full steam ahead. But, you don't have to be in a rush. You can absolutely gain a lot of knowledge and learn a lot about yourself in that first job, just being open to whatever opportunities and people come your way.
I agree with everything that's been said, but I look at it this way. I get this question asked to me a lot because in an interview, it's a two-way process. I'm interviewing someone as a candidate, but I'm hoping that candidate's going to interview me back as an employer. And one of the questions I always get asked, what would be my career development or career growth at your organization? And I'll be honest, it's a tough question for me to answer because in my organization, we're small, utility. We're a young utility, and I mean young as in workforce. A lot of people have their first jobs, and they don't leave. We have great retention. So growth opportunities are really hard, maybe vertically, but it goes back to an earlier question where growth opportunities can be about adding more to your responsibilities or working on a project because your path may not be straight. Your path is going to be a little bit zigzag, but every jag you take in your path on your career is going to get you to the next level because it's all going to mean something. And I think that goes back to having the open mind and back to the other key thing, be receptive to feedback, whether it's positive or maybe a little bit critical, because there's a reason why you're being told that. And everybody's trying to help you on that journey to get to your next step. And I think communication is key. The other thing I would say is maybe map out how you might want to see your career to go. And what I've done is gone look at postings for those careers to see what is required of those positions and where do I have my gap and how am I going to fill that gap to get to the next level. And I'll be honest, I didn't start out in HR. I started out in office administration and being an EA to the president, but I knew I wanted to get into HR. What am I going to need to do it? Because I don't have a business degree. I have an office administration degree. So I found out what I need to be successful to transition my career. We can all do that, especially if you find your passion. I think that's really important. That's what about finding your first job is, and it's about that discovery. But I think it's about you drive your own career path, your own career progression, but you need people along the way to help and support you to do it, whether it's your employer or your family. But it's about communication because in the workforce, sometimes somebody may have a lot of employees and not all managers might have the opportunity to have that conversation. So sometimes you might have to initiate the conversation. You may see something you want to go after, spark that conversation and hey, can I be a part of that process? Can I be invited to that meeting? I want to know more. It's the little things that will become bigger things that will move you along the career progression. And I think that's the most important thing, but be always willing to learn, willing to receive feedback, and maybe a little bit of hard work. Sometimes, you have to do that as well. And it might be outside your day-to-day. So that would be my advice on career progression.
Wonderful. So I think we have time for a few questions from the students. We have 2 microphones that are on, so you can just approach and ask questions.
Where do you think the line is drawn between work-life home balance, quiet quitting, and being a go-getter?
I like to answer that because I just had a recent conversation with somebody about that. It's a hard line and it's a hard thing to discuss, especially, I will say, if you're at the management level of a position too, to draw that line. It might be easier for others. I think part of it is conversation of, with your employer and when you're getting that contract. Your letter of offer is going to outline the details and expectations of you, but then you get in the workforce and you might read the organization, right? That you might see something slightly different, and it's about having that conversation with your manager or supervisor or HR. It is a hard line. It's a hot topic, especially with people who I find, and we've had this conversation, who are long-standing employees, because there's always been that expectation. You've worked harder or longer hours, and now you've suddenly changed to set those boundaries, and they're like, oh, she's not here at 6 o'clock anymore at night. Why is that? And it's about sort of having, I think, that conversation. I can share personally myself. I no longer look at my cell phone past 6 o'clock on Friday night, and I'm not going to look at it again until Monday morning because I want my weekend back, unless obviously there's an HR emergency or something like that, because your mind is always there and it's not stopping. And I think what we realized through the pandemic is we all need a break, and you need to have that balance. And I think that's where this quiet quitting is coming from. People are sort of taking back. But that line is hard for some employers, because what it means is if people aren't doing that, are job expectations not being met or deliverables, and do I have to hire more resources, right? So it's trying to figure out that right balance.
If there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for your time, knowledge, expertise. And just on behalf of all of us, we just have a little token of appreciation.